Mm. So, by all means, is not a typical reading for astrology. It's a little bit more abstract. Although I wanted to look at something I feel is can say vital to humanity's connection to itself, integration, being part of how the universe expanding its consciousness. It's as simple as being a child, like a baby, toddler. Because I was looking at my things I've been getting into, and my ear just clogged. Let me drink some water. Not sure that's helping, but it's okay. I can hear myself. Oh no, it's gone. Okay. So the thing I've been going through was something that happens every now and then, and every now and then I forget. As Eckhart Tolle puts it, um, when we realize we're not present, that's when we're present. And presence is definitely I can say, symptom of having that childlikeness. In one of my favorite movies, Under the Tuscan Sun, he said, my favorite line is, never lose your childish enthusiasm. And I think it goes into it's the most important thing. Live spherically. So, although we have as adults, we have judgments and labels and all that stuff, because that's pretty much, when the ego forms, it's a lens, right? It's how we see life. It's how we see existence. But really, everything is neutral until we give it meaning. So I wanted to see from an astrological perspective using microastrology, which is welcome to my channel. My name is Jose. I do that. I do microastrology where I work with hundreds of asteroids, dwarf planets, centaurs, and what have you. Looking at the little things and seeing what details you could get directly. Because it's kind of like a cheat, but at the same time, it's not, because when I was doing my research on each asteroid, dwarf planet, and so on, they were pre-downloaded. Basically, they're inspired ideas, inspired meanings of interpretation. So it's kind of already there. I just further interpret if I have to. So, um, yeah. So grateful that it's cold, because it's not only keeping me awake, but it's getting me to move. Usually when I'm moving, my Meniere's gets, it acts up. So anyways, the point is I wanted to see what it's like in the charts. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share screen here. I'm actually gonna do for February 19th for today, but I'm actually also gonna do a transit of this technical transit. It's not really, it's an event chart, what you call an event chart, because it's focusing on today, but not necessarily from a specific time, and then you're doing the transits. It's a little weird in astrology. Anyways, okay, here we go. All right, so first thing I look at is child. Actually, the asteroid is called child. And literally, yes, it's about children, but it's all that stuff that I mentioned about children, being childlike, being of being present, that's one of the things, right? Unconditional love, wholeness, purity, innocence. It's really what it is. It's non-labeled. You could also say it's source channeling, inspiration, optimism, genuine lead by example. The reason we love children and specifically babies is because we're reminded of our innocence. Because that innocence is really our presence. It's our, you know. So, um, being the fact that it's in conjunct Chiron, you can probably see here. Gonna annotate this one. You can see this. Let's look at a different color. That was purple. This one. Okay, right there. So conjunct Chiron. To me, it feels like childhood woundings, things regarding inner child wounds. Humanity is going through that, especially if your placement is Chiron. If you also have Chiron in close to the 23rd degree, but 8 degrees before and after, to Chiron in Aries. So if you're in Aries, somehow, probably. Okay. Um, I'm also seeing that I'm not going to go into odds right now. There's so much to work with. Odds, by the way, give us more specific readings to a chart another time. That's from Vedic astrology, actually. So what they do in India typically. But this is, yeah. Okay. So child here, it's conjunct to that. So that means that people are naturally headed towards that. Going through childlike things, probably experiencing childish, childlike things, or working with children or dealing with children. Um, Maybe there's some triggers. That's part of the whole process of going through this whole get the child thing. It's basically saying, okay, so it could be many things. It could be tied to anything related to children, um, potty training, feeding children, driving children to school, crying and all that stuff, anything childlike. But it also could mean that there is, because it's in Aries and there's square to Nymph and Alecto, right here I'm noticing, oh, it's not, it's Chiron is square to Nymph, Alecto, and Jupiter. So that means that, because they're all in retrograde, there's an intense focus on growth towards embracing your, I think it was, what is this one? Wrath. So it could be that there's something to do, so it has something to do with, um, I don't want to go too negatively into this, but things that are violations against children, possibly, or issues regarding that free will. Nip here is like being free spirited, being kind of like closer, being in touch with your inner nature. Okay, nymph is the forest. Like if you think about nymphs, that's what she is. Okay. Not being tied down as well. Oh, 1 second here. Are you seeing my chart here? 1 second. Okay. Okay, so carefree romanticism, small things, inner child again, so it's very much tied to this one, natural forces, magic, magical creatures, magic folk, you name it, elves, fairies, gnomes, etc. Um, Virginity, okay, untampered places, exploratory, so natural phenomena, single-celled organisms, so spring water, wells, icebergs, all those kind of things. So with Electo there, it's like wrath, and she's one of the Furies. So I feel like there's a strong, because it's in Cancer, it's like it's tied to the home, it's tied to places of bodies of water as well, things we sense in ourselves, magnetism. So maybe there's a challenge between growing in that direction, and then we're expanding from that. Probably businesses that are to, or foreign relations, probably foreign businesses like homes, expansion of the home, learning, educational systems, all that sort of things, but tied to the home, tied to the heart, tied to, also tied to your chest area, the breast and all that stuff. So there could be inflammation tied to this one. Um, Again, it could be like a reversal. It's like maybe there's inflammation in where it shouldn't be because maybe we're not facing inner child wounds. We're not honestly facing and integrating shadows of our inner child that when we were children, what did we want to do? Right. And we didn't follow that because we were told, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that. So could be violations as well, could be wrath, it could be a lot of anger towards all that issue. If I were to look further into Electo, she's also turning pain into purpose. But the thing is, she's basically present because when we're not present, what happens is we're against resisting the present moment, right? Electo, just like the Furies, avenges natural order. When I say avenges, I mean it's the part of our psyche. The Furies are a part of our psyche that wants to be natural again, but we've forgotten how to do it. So that's why we're like so suppressed. So it could be happening in the home, it could be happening in nature as well. Bodies of water, close to water, families, of course, any relationship, any emotional ties as well. So a lot of emotions involved here also because Aries, explosive emotions, those kind of things. Now, when we look at the placement of all three planets, Jupiter, Alecto, Nymph, all retrograde, so that means it's an internal ongoing focus. Um, and it repeats itself. It's trying to Baba Moresa, that not an asteroid up here. She's right there. She's a dwarf planet. So she's also about connecting to your inner nature, like your primordial, like you call it, like cosmic nature. She's tied to that. She's tied to origin. She's tied to happiness. She's tied to real joy, and creative potential. Same with Sirona. Sirona is about forest fires. So Sirona is one of the Roman goddesses of, what's her name? Roman goddess of basically, well, it's fire. I guess it was fire. I'm not sure. Or that Verona. Sorry. So she's about submergence and emergence. So cosmos, oneness, right? So basically, source energy as well. There's a lot of deities that were tied to that. She's also kind of like Haumea. She's about eggs as well. So basically, she's about creativity, just like Mbaba. And so what's happening here is there's a flow towards really facing your shadow, going deep because it's in Scorpio. Yeah. And also there's also trine to Mercury here. So any sort of thoughts we're going into, any sort of communication or process, any transmission of information, we're going through it more through our intuition, high intuition. In fact, because it's ruled by Neptune, it's through the subconscious. And a lot of it is water right now. Okay, so going back to the whole thing about being childlike and present, that's really what it is. Children don't question their primordial sovereignty, as I call it, right? But adults, we do that all the time. Right? So there could be avoidance as well, not to talk about it. There could be escapism. If you look at Neptune right now, Neptune is in its transformative state. It's in a new sign. It's in Aries. And restructuring with Saturn here is showing that that's happening. In fact, Saturn and Neptune are squared to chaos right now. So this new transformation is it's not chaotic. Chaos is not chaotic. I love chaos because he's about he was the first basically deity in Greek mythology. He was the darkness. So the primordial darkness that people get scared about, because it's ability to recreate again, start over again. Chaos is the part of us that goes like, oh, starting over afresh. But at the same time, because we're tapping into primordial gifts, like that whole thing that, we sometimes still believe, even though we think it. We believe, we say to ourselves, I've heard this before. It's like, oh, um, chaos, sorry, uh, do this and do that. We have all these spiritual things, and that this is not a judgment towards anything at all. But I hear this all the time. It's like we do things and we say things, but do we really believe it? Because if we did, we wouldn't usually talk about it. We just do it, right? So chaos represents that whole like real connection to your soul, basically, and higher. I mean, when you say higher, I don't mean necessarily in a way that's like higher, higher. What do you mean higher? That's just these are just terms. Children know this. So children, as in specifically like babies, toddlers, they're not conditioned. They're not, you know, any of that stuff. There's no judgment. There's no labels. They're just doing. We see it when you see a baby. We see go like, oh, they're crying, so it affects us emotionally. But to them, it's an automatic response to be like, this is my way of surviving. I'm going to call for help. I'm going to depend on you because you have more power. It's not manipulation. You might think it's manipulation. I've seen this time and time and time and time again. When someone says something, and even when I say something, or when someone says something, there's judgment that I have about it. It's like, oh, you know, because those are conditioned states of being, states of consciousness. And that's fine. Again, even just the fact that I said states of consciousness, what the fuck is that? Like, it's a label. Now, it's not to say that we cannot have labels, but eventually we will get to the point where we're going back to that as well. So, now see here, quincunx Megaira Mars to Nymph Alecto, specifically Nymph. So that means that there's certain parts of humanity that has to adapt to natural phenomena or things that are going back into nature, especially natural process of nature itself, which is in this case tied to water, so global warming. Cancer is tied to warm waters. That explains that. So this could also be like melting of the ice in the poles. Okay. Again, I would say it's also tied to the polarities, which is about Chiron. So that explains why the poles are shifting and where we're talking about what's happening with chaos here. Chaos needs to happen because we've forgotten how to do it. It's kind of like Uranus. But chaos in this case is we think it's chaos when it's like, I don't know what's going on. But that's the thing. Do we need to really know what's going on? That explains the placement of Mercury here. Just need to know basis. I need to know what's going on. And I've been going through that too myself. So I'm not exempt from this whole process. Okay. Um, there's also Odin and Angel, which Angel is angels. Talking about the closest representational, um, you can say representational and what we call angels, but existence or body or beings that are closest to God's source, universal energy. Right? But it's opposite of Uranus. So the shift that's happening with the shifting of restructuring, there's also shaking of old systems or boundaries being shaken, unexpected things when it comes to pleasure, community, entertainment. That's Taurus. Um, in the anaretic degrees of Taurus, it's actually very intense, but it's actually towards Aries. It has a lot of Aries in there, so that means that there's sort of like Mars energy there. And with Mars here, square Uranus, that totally explains that. There's a sort of a fight towards that change, but does the fighting actually help anything? Right? You also have Mars, Megara, square, Sirona, and Baba here. So the square that we have, it's like there's fighting going on, but it's like, well, we have to be open to that kind of stuff. But anyways, I'm not going to be preachy here. So I think it's best that we learn directly from experience. Tisiphone is also conjunct Angel and Odin here. So we're getting wisdom from the experiences of these shifts from these expansive energies. Okay, that's Sagittarius expansion, learning, philosophy, higher education as well. belief systems. Okay, there's a shifting towards that. Odin is frenzy. She's about crazy energy going on. Or with Angel there, it's kind of just like a lot of information coming in. With Tisiphone, she's because even though she is one of the Furies, she's not about wrath. I believe she is about just murder. So I know it's a little negative, but what this means is that um, things are happening worldwide when it comes to these kind of things because people are resisting it. They don't have the right tools for it. And I think we are being given the right tools for that. The right, you can say information per se, but it's also through experience. Primarily, I would say it is through experience. It's through the body. That's where Uranus comes in here. The experience through the body is something probably we're not used to, the shifting of physical form, especially ear, nose, and throat. That's Taurus, right? And also food, right? So anything, any sort of shifts happening in the food industry as well, it's tied to this with our senses. Okay, that's sensuality. That's tied to Venus ruled Taurus. So these unexpected shifts is if you're getting all these shifts, whether physically, your body, structures, or all these things, intuition, all that stuff, but it's primarily through the body. That means you have to go through that. That's how you really learn, right? In fact, Pluto here, humanity, humanity is in Aquarius, so that means represents humanity, represents the collective groups, um, communities as well, any social groups, any sort of like process itself. It's trying to Uranus. It's actually, so that means it's naturally happening. It's flowing. That's part of the flow, so to speak. But if we're not going with that flow of shaking the ground and decluttering and breaking boundaries and breaking our senses, breaking our bodies. No, not to say that we need to be violent about it, but that violent thing is because we've been too complacent. Right? Psyche here is actually in a T-square to the nodes. So that means that Psyche is pulling us towards acceptance of what is. Psyche is unconditional love as well. She was, and just accepting that whatever happens, even though it's a surprise, even though we're not, she's tied to Cupid, or rather Eros. When she met Eros, she wasn't sure if she was the right person, but then lo and behold, so it's almost like trusting the process. It's basically not almost, it is trusting the process. Psyche represents trusting the process. We're in our tendency right now is to go into analysis paralysis right here, right? In Virgo, going into so much of the detail, the nitty gritty of things, and overanalyzing things. But we need to balance that with just because we're analyzing something does not mean that we cannot flow with it. Okay, we have Venus, and it's kind of Venus actually conjunct North Node. So that means we have to kind of allow for it, trust our relationships with people, trust the process, while also getting the gifts from our natural selves, like the gifts we discovered. It's like, oh, we can actually analyze things, but not to the point where it's actually killing us. Okay, it's actually the South Node is square Tisiphone, which means when we are just like holding on to, I need to know, I need to know, I need to know, I need to know, that's also Virgo and it's square Psyche. So we have here like this square, like a grand immutable square. You have to go with the flow, but at the same time, we can't overthink things too much. We have to balance it. We have to, as one of my favorite TV shows, I want to stop sharing here because I think that's about it. Um, Last Airbender, there's an episode where he met a guru. He meets a guru and he says every element is connected. We just think they're separate, but it's not. If you think about fire, how is that related to earth? Well, think about it or process it emotionally, feel it. What is fire? You have two rocks. What happens when you rub it? What happens when fire starts to cool? What does fire do? How does fire go into earth? Right? So look at all the ways fire is used. You put the two together, right? Same thing with earth and air. What's in air? Aren't they molecules? You can feel the air when it blows through you, right? But when you're feeling that, is that just really air, or is that just little tiny molecules that are actually technically solid? Same with water, sorry, air to water. When when air starts to gather, um, hydrogen, oxygen, right, turns into water. So, I mean, that's just a simplistic way of putting it. You didn't to go too much into science, right? So there's science and faith coming together with these nodes as well. So, anyways, I got a little preachy there. So that wasn't my intention. My intention was just completely have fun with the reading. But it feels like that's that. I actually realized that I was going to do something else. I'm going to see if I can do a bit of prediction. So I'm trying to see when child will be trine Pluto. The reason I'm doing that is because it's the one I saw close to it. Right, so child is right here. And I wanted to see if it was child is my focus asteroid here, actually. Because it's child. So child will I noticed that will be in the first few degrees of Gemini on May of this year, 2026, May 27th, while Pluto, now look at May 2026, on May, the same thing, it's 5 degrees. So child will be at about 5 degrees, 30 minutes. Pluto will be also about 5 degrees, 25 minutes in Aquarius. So that means that there will be more childlike approach to how we communicate with each other. That also means like groups, collectives, technology, communication. Child will be part of that process of reintegrating what feels more natural. I would say, I would hope, I can only hope, because it's a trine aspect, I feel like it's going to change all that stuff. So anything childlike, any childlikeness, yeah. Let's take a look at the transits of this transit. Technically, it's a transit. So we see here child will be conjunct the sun. So governments will be involved in this. Uranus will also be part of this process. It's conjunct Uranus here. So government systems, leaderships will be part of this process as well. Is there any other trine? I wanted to kind of let's see if there's anything. No. Technically, the moon here for about a day or so will be also trine to this placement right here. Just maybe on the 26th of May, 25th of May, maybe, the moon will be also trine to that. So that means that people will be kind of like, I would say, introduced to it, if they're aware of it, if it's in their sphere of influence, sphere of information, whatever, right? But it'll actually be opposite of Tisiphone. Angel and Odin will be pulling back. So Tisiphone here will be wondering about foreign affairs, any sort of violations, any sort of like things that, so this will be so-called avenged, meaning that there will be repercussions tied to the integration. We have to integrate the fact that why are people doing this, and it explains what happened like in Canada with British Columbia, the thing that happened. Children did, get hurt. But I'm not trying to go into the negative here, but I'm just saying there's a reason for that, right? We can probably say like, oh yes, the soul chose to da 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 and they were here da da da. But we have to be also realize that it's like if someone gets to that point where they're so unconsciously part of the process. And I know that there's a reason behind it too, but at the same time, there's a reason behind the reason. So process that for a bit. I'm not going to go into the negative stuff here, but at the same time, I'm also not going to ignore and avoid that the fact that that's happened. Um, there will also be okay. So the nodes will be coming towards. So the nodes work differently in astrology. They don't work counterclockwise. They actually move clockwise. So as they move toward that, the nodes will be actually square child. So that also means that as Angel is here on this side, right here, and possibly Odin is part of this one, there's messages coming through for this. But let's not, I personally wouldn't just focus on, I'm getting a message. That's not the point. The point is, are we really learning from this? Sometimes we're in the age of Aquarius, and Aquarius is about fads or change. But we get in too much of the fads. Fads are not necessarily right or wrong, and change is not right or wrong. It's what we put into it. But if there's an imbalance between the two, how much are we putting into it? If that makes sense. So I'm also kind of just like questioning myself and like or posing questions to myself. Am I actually learning from it? Probably not. I'm not sure. I haven't been affected by that, but we do all have trauma. We all have inner child, concerns, especially, yeah. Anyways, anyways, kind of like I say, food for thought or astrological food for thought. Thank you for watching. That's it for now. That's a long reading. um, See you guys later.